All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to Vassals of Kingsgrave for I don't know, another edition of British-ish television chat, I guess. As we cover Bridgerton season 3, I guess the first part. They didn't release the whole season at once. My name is Adam, also known as Drowned Snow, and today I am joined by Matt,
Hey, hey, how's it going?
Stephanie,
Hi, Stephanie's GSTG on the forums.
and then I believe Bina is around or will be joining us shortly, and potentially some other vassals will join on here as we get going. What did you guys think? Are we doing lemon cakes, or what would be a good what would be a good rating for this like half season or whatever?
Hi everyone, Bina here.
Hey.
I can start. I'll give the first half of this season a 4 out of 5. I thoroughly enjoyed it and watched it all in one go, and was mildly disappointed when I realised it wasn't the whole season.
I would say probably the same thing. Four seems like a good number for this type of show. I did know it was half a season with the trailer, but yeah, I watched it all on like that Friday whenever it was released, including a little at work. So had a blast.
Like a 3.5. Good. It's what I expected, but it's a fun watch.
Yeah, I guess maybe I'll split the difference. I'll give it like a 3.75. Like I enjoyed it. This is one of those shows that definitely comes on and I forget that it's coming back, or I'm like, oh yeah, and then it pops up, and then I'm excited to watch it. So I don't really know as much going in. I had to kind of. I'm really grateful for like the recaps and stuff, because I'm like, where do we leave off last season? So where. But yeah, I give it like 3.75, like runaway hot air balloons.
I have to say, I went on a walk yesterday to Painshill Park, which is very close to where I live, and it's where they shot that hot air balloon scene. So I was very much in Bridgerton territory. So can I ask a question for those of you on? Do you know the books as well as the show? Because I think that probably impacts when I see a lot of stuff online about how people are reacting. As we were with Game of Thrones, I think a lot of people get quite pernickety if they're book lovers. So does knowing the books impact your ratings if you do? I don't know, David, are you a book reader as well as a show watcher?
I'm not a book reader, so that doesn't impact in any way. And I don't tend to be the type that like depends. My enjoyment depends on how faithful it is. Just depends on how good it actually turns out to be. So, oh, and for my personal rating, I'd give this pretty close to 5 out of 5. I loved it so far.
Yeah, I guess my disappointment was the fact that we only got half the season, and it felt like the story was getting started. But I guess I'll be that guy, and I'll just say there are books? Question mark.
I haven't read the books, but I've been swimming in the Regency waters for a very long time. So still down to do Jane Austen cast, Bina, whenever you finish Agatha Christie.
I am very, very much up for that. I have to say, after the first season of Bridgerton came out, I did start reading the books, and I read them all in about a month and a half. And they're very kind of light and fluffy and disposable. And then I completely forgot what was in them. So I'm both a bit. I really enjoyed them, but I think when you read the books, you realise how different the show is. That Shonda Rhimes, the writers have decided, obviously, to make it very inclusive racially and to really bring their own spin to things. So yes, they're very similar insofar as I think the writer has a deal with the network that the couples have to end up together, that are how they end up in the books.
Oh,
But I think you
interesting.
realise that they're very much their own world, and I think there's a lot of wit and a lot of I think there's a lot to the way they're doing it in the TV show that I really admire, actually, and that's much more trying to comment on our world or to be, more progressive, and I really like that too. But I'm not one of these people I'm not like a huge fan of the books to sort of worry about whether they're different or not, but I think some people
So is it
are.
significantly different? I mean, like, when were these written?
Relatively recently, but they are definitely, I would say, the classic sort of romantic historical fiction, which is sort of, very romantic, a little bit of light sexiness, but nothing too risque. And it's a very kind of heteronormative, very white world. And I think what Shondaland does is try to broaden that out and give that, I think a lot with the costumes and the way they've used the music is very heightened, like hyper real and gorgeous and luscious, isn't it? So that all goes further. And I think the Featherston family and the character of the mum, that's broader. I suppose the other big difference to point out, and maybe we can get into it when we discuss Colin and Penelope, is their love story comes later. So each sibling has a book. And the Colin and Penelope, so the Penelope and the Eloise ones come very near the end. And I think you're meant to feel the pressure of of them now being old maids. So they were these kind of sarcastic fun, we're the wittiest ladies in the ton. But because I think they've brought the Penelope one forward, that does change a little bit. Like, I don't think you get the true desperation. So by the time you get to Colin and Penelope and Eloise in particular in the novels, it's kind of like, yeah, they really are about to be left on the shelf. And so that flirtation with Lord Devlin and the idea that maybe a pragmatic financial marriage that just offers security actually might be attractive. So I felt maybe it was a bit early to have a Penelope story for me, but I really, really enjoyed seeing it done.
Yeah, my guess would be is that they kind of just wanted it's mainly the whistle down part that they wanted to bring up, and so you can't do one without the other. That would be my guess at it.
Yeah, because they reveal her identity earlier in the show,
Yeah.
like, from almost the start. The other thing is when Colin proposes in the novel, he already knows she's Lady Whistledown, I
Right,
believe.
yeah.
So I guess
Yeah.
that's going to be the big complication of the second half,
Right.
isn't it? That's going to be
Right.
the back end.
That's the whole second half's got to be focusing on that.
Yeah, they're going to have sexy time. It's going to be gorgeous. And oh no!
And then, by the way,
Exactly.
Yeah,
By the
but
way,
then
I
there's
ruined
the
your sister's life last year.
yeah, there's something
scandalous.
to be said for, just like milking it that way. But then at the other hand, how often do people complain that, like the story ends at the church door, right? So
Oh yeah, for sure. And the joy of Bridgerton is seeing the sexy time, right? And all that good stuff. Do you guys want to get into it by character? Do you want to do the different stories in order? I don't know.
Sure.
Okay, so Colin and Penelope, give us your thoughts, everyone.
Love it. Love it. I figured that the mid-season would end with a bang, but I didn't think it would end with a finger bang. And a proposal.
Oh, do you think fingers were involved? I didn't realize that. Oh, okay.
That's what I thought was going on in the
I thought
In the
that was
carriage.
I thought
we
that was
put
clearly
called
a finger
heavy
bang.
petting.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel so naive.
It certainly escalated very quickly.
Right.
Yeah,
From I've never been kissed. From I've never been kissed to here we go.
Yeah, I definitely enjoy them overall. I don't. I imagine that Anthony and Kate will never really be topped. From what I understand, that's like the most people's favorite book in the series, and I imagine that's probably the main reason why. So I doubt they will ever be. People will ever match that. But I like them overall, and then there's also kind of a bunch of other pairings they added to the mix just to kind of like fill in the gaps a little bit.
Well, I mean, I feel like Penelope's the character that probably most readers and watchers relate to the most. We all like her, the quote unquote ugly duckling or the nerd and all that. I mean, her or Eloise probably for most of us at least. So of course we want to see her have a happy, get a happy romance, get the fairy tale ending that we all want. Of course it's going to be complicated because that's what we're watching.
There's a substantial online presence on Threads, at least, because that's where I am these days, that wants Penelope to end up with Lord Devling and doesn't feel Colin deserves her. How do you guys feel about that?
I mean, he is a fuck boy, so I can
Yeah.
I can understand it.
I mean,
I do love when he comes back and is like playing the game of like, oh, I couldn't possibly tell you even the slightest about my journeys. Like he's like, yeah, he cracks me up.
I mean, I feel like, whether we think Colin deserves her, we think she deserves him. So I still am going to root for them for that reason, if nothing else, because that's what Penelope wants so desperately. I mean, while it would be nice to see her have a secure future and all that with the other Lord, I mean, she's wanted Colin her whole life, and we're all going to root for that, right?
Right.
Yeah, I agree. And especially, I think, in the books, because he's been away longer traveling, I think when he comes back, he really is this Byronic romantic figure, like even more so than in the books. Like, I mean, okay, they almost take the piss out of people swooning over him in the TV show, but you're meant to understand that he really is just absolutely dreamy. And it is lovely seeing her get him, for sure. But Lord Devling, I mean, like you brought up Jane Austen, Stephanie. I mean, that is the kind of the Pride and Prejudice sensible marriage to the awful Reverend, isn't it?
Yep. Yeah, but like it makes sense, and there's they make I don't know how they do this in the books, but like speaking of Pride and Prejudice, Charlotte Lucas is 28 when she marries Mr. Collins, but they make a big deal in the show about being out still in your third season. So just being for 3 years on the marriage market.
So then,
Yeah.
like, what, being like 20? Like,
Yeah.
When do they go out? Like, when is that? 16, 17?
Good question, Bina. Do you have a rough age? It is just, yeah, it should be around like that, like late teens, right? But then
So in the books, Penelope is closer to that Charlotte age. So that desperation of I'm now stale. This is no longer like I think there's a thing with Eloise and Penelope early on in the novels where you feel they're not getting married for their choice because they haven't found someone to live up to their standards and they find the whole thing laughable. But by the time you get to the Penelope book where she does want to be married, there is a desperation, which I think you don't get in the TV show because it hasn't been long enough, and they are more at that age. Like here, they're only meant to be out 2 or 3 seasons. They should
Right.
be more like 21. So yeah, maybe like I think you get more of that desperation actually weirdly from Cressida in the TV show. That really sad
And it's coming
desperation.
from, and it's not coming from society, it's coming from her parents, really.
Yeah, it's
Right.
like if I don't find a suitor of my own choice this season, they're going to marry me some really old guy. That's Cressida's choice. Like
Yeah, that's
I'm you know. So
yeah, but how much has that actually changed? Because I'm in my late 20s, and that's this. Like this is the age where at in modern times, this is when like it's the responsible age to marry, but at the same time, it's just like the way people just completely are appear to be in a rush to do it. It's just so bizarre to me, at least. But
it feels all the celebrities are getting married even younger now, like Justin and Hailey Bieber and Millie Bobby Brown just got married to John Bon Jovi's kid this weekend. And
Wait,
yeah,
what?
but you can't really
Yep.
say that, or can't really hold celebrities to that exact standard, right? Because at some point, all those all those expensive Hollywood marriages and divorces after 5 months, that's kind of its own form of conspicuous consumption, isn't it? That like I can
Yeah,
afford this
they're like, you got to get
California
the first
divorce.
marriage out of the way, right? You got to get it under the belt.
the start of marriage. Yeah, maybe the society hasn't changed. It's just more implied than explicit. And maybe this was just a more honest form of it. Yeah, maybe. But I didn't feel that I didn't feel why yet Eloise and Penelope would be that desperate. It didn't feel. I
Yeah,
suppose the
but
way they did
also
in the
it's
TV show is they make the mother more horrid, don't they? So
Right.
it
yeah,
makes
but also
escaping the mother.
in this case, it's also about Penelope's sense of isolation because she's lost Eloise, because they said we're going to be spinsters together. And
Right.
now that like Penelope's double life as Lady Whistledown has ruined that relationship with Eloise, that like there's no companionship in
Consolation.
there's no companionship in spinsterhood that she previously had to look forward to, right? It's everyone is like it's a matter of I'm okay bucking society's expectations when I have someone to defy society's expectations with in our own way of like companionship, where we're still kind of each other's priority, but then like the person that you were hoping to do that with has other plans, right? And that's partially due to your own actions, right?
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting is if you're a book reader, then actually in the books, because Penelope gets married to Colin first, actually that's Eloise's motivation for then getting married is, oh, what made this bearable was having Penelope, but if she's gone, then I need to now look for a partner. So I guess the writers have maybe just flipped it over.
Yeah. And that is true to life, of just like suddenly all your friends are coupled up, and like couples date other couples, and like it's just like it's being the one single friend in a friend group. Suddenly it's just cast her out.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's just making me think of all the ways society's still pretty savage, but just in a different way.
And the other thing to remember is that Lord Debling is actually not in the books, as something I read online, and that they created him for the show. But I thought they made like that. I mean, I could see marrying him being very attractive for her because he is very kind. I mean, that was probably one of the kindest dumpings you've ever seen on television, or one of them. I mean, he's a nice person. He does it in a nice way, and you could see how like living that life that he's kind of envisioning here doesn't seem like, I mean, for if her option was to not be, to be the spinster, this seems like a pretty attractive option, I would think. I can see that,
Yeah, and she'd have plenty of time to be Lady Whistledown. She'd run the house. She'd have real
Mhm.
independence and agency.
Right?
I think he's a lovely guy. It's just he can offer her so much, but just not passion. And she
Right,
Yeah, they're
wants.
which
just
is what
not
she
compatible,
wants.
and she
Yeah.
was for romantically, and that was that was okay with her, except he's just not okay with leaving her for that long when she's clearly in love with someone else, like you said.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean he's not being unreasonable there.
Right?
Yeah.
So he does seem like such a good dude, which makes the whole thing. I don't know if it makes it harder or it makes it easier, but
I like the fact that the TV show gave her an option that,
Mhm.
like, otherwise it's kind of like I've been in love with Colin my whole life and now he deigns to look at me, so now we're together. I think this is a
Mhm.
much stronger or more feminist story for her insofar as she has a choice. Like, she can choose whether to be with Colin or whether to be with Lord Devlin, and I think that's
Yeah.
nice for her.
Well, she can't really because he took that option from her.
Not
But
now, but he
That's
could have.
yeah,
fair.
but originally,
But it
Yeah,
is
and
nice
also
that he's
they
not just like a skeevy, bad option type guy.
right.
So,
Like a genuinely attractive in a slightly different way.
right.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, also, it's the old trick of just, like of from the first season of, like give her a real love interest or give her a love interest who's the safe bet to make her real love interest interested, right? So,
How
I
do
mean, I
you
feel
guys
like
all sorry.
I would say I feel like Penelope could have very easily seen herself in the situation. Lady Danbury was in the. Did you watch the Queen spinoff, Queen Charlotte spinoff?
Yeah, I did.
You know,
I did. I love this
I
world.
could
I'll watch anything in
easily
it.
I could easily see her, having been put in that situation where she's like, laying in bed going, "Oh my God, can this be over with?" And like that being her life. And at least, this is certainly a lot better than that would have been. But of course, now she doesn't have that option, but she gets the one she wants anyways, at least for now. So,
Yeah, let's see what happens.
I mean, they're gonna call it off once he finds out that she's Lady Whistlebit down, but then Eloise will say something like, "I forgive her enough, so go get her."
yeah, right.
Yeah, evidently. How do you all feel about Eloise and Cressida? This really set the Instagrams and the threads aflame. People thinking that is Shondaland going to make this a gay storyline, which would be wonderful. Some people angry at the attempted softening of Cressida, who after all has been nothing but a bitch to Penelope all these years. Or are they setting up Benedict's storyline for those of you who've read the book? I mean, there's so much chatter about this storyline, and
Oh,
obviously
that's
Cressida's phenomenal costumes and hair, which are just
Right.
fantastic. I mean, it is a little bit of a redemption arc for those of you familiar with Scandival out there. A little bit like this past season of Vanderpump Rules and the attempted producers trying to soften Sandoval. How do we feel about this putative friendship? It felt a bit thin to me. Like, oh, they had a summer together and now they're mates. What?
yeah. I mean, yeah,
I don't-
you kind of leave the backstory on the table. We don't really see it; they just kind of are. So that can be tough. But that's it. So that's interesting. So Cressida is Benedict's match. I was always wondering.
No.
that.
But the house that she's in. So actually, I'm not going to spoil it. But all I'm going to say, not that it's not Cressida, but someone in her environment. So there's
Okay.
elements because we see her house for the first time and that mausoleum style library, and there's just elements that
Yeah.
suggest that maybe
Mm.
there's a match could be somewhere in that environment. Sorry, I didn't mean to mislead.
All right,
Well, I think with Eloise, it's more like she was ruined at the end of last season when when Lady Whistledown put her name in papers like that. So, and the idea was that like whether Cressida wasn't entirely genuine in that or in how she reached out to her. She still reached out to her when Penelope betrayed her and no one else wanted to talk to her. That means something, even though we can't necessarily read Cressida's mind, but.
In general, I was going to say when I was thinking about what I wanted to say here about the episodes is that I like how not just with her but with pretty much all the quote unquote villains, they softened them and gave them a little more motivation. I mean, even Lady Featherington, we got a little nuance from her this season, unlike the last 2 years. Like she seemed genuinely torn when like Penelope's thing fell apart. She seemed to genuinely care and like not just I'm desperate and I'll scheme and be evil and do what I have to do. I think all the quote unquote villainous characters, and I don't know if you can put Lord Debling in that category or not, but all seem to have better motivations this season and be a little more complex and nuanced and not just like the bitch.
Yeah, I've really felt for Cressida, and I thought, well, all the
Mhm.
horrible stuff she's done to undermine her love rivals,
Right.
if this marriage mart is genuinely that savage, then maybe this is kind of the rational outcome of that. I mean, it's not nice, but
Right.
Don't hate the player, hate the game.
yeah, exactly. Succinctly put. Succinctly put.
I like the moment they had with her where she like talks about, where she basically talks about how she realizes that there's consequences to being the mean girl. Not only does she not have suitors coming after her, but she hasn't even had a friend. And I kind of like that that growth in her,
Yeah.
and that Eloise helped bring that growth in her and helped her realize, and like, I mean, how often did she point out, like, you don't have to be the bitch, you don't have to be mean all the time, you could be kind. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
and just like Penelope is experiencing the consequences of her actions, like she's,
right.
like she's, we understand why she's, why she's chosen to take on the alter ego of Lady Whistledown, and just for, like the thrill of it, this, and also the financial rewards. But then it's just like, yeah, like how many people has she ruined just by, like printing what she overhears from the servants or what she observes about them, right? And
Actions have consequences. What I
yeah.
like about Cressida is like, because she does, I think Shondaland can have some fun, the writers can have some fun, and hopefully give her growth and a good match at the end. I hope they'll have the freedom to do that for sure.
I like the little twist in the middle there of how when Penelope's secret was revealed, that it was all set up to obviously be her that told everyone, but it turned out she didn't. And of course
Yes.
Eloise just assumed it because she's the mean girl, and then she's like, it wasn't me, actually it was you. You were a little incautious with your words, and it's kind of your fault this slipped out. And I kind of liked that moment there a lot.
Hmm. So let's go to maybe another couple that I think surprised a lot of people to be featured this season, because so far we've only really ever had one sibling have their love affair per season. And it feels like we're having a little Francesca moment
Right.
this season with her lovely silent partner. How do you guys find this story? I guess they're both neurodiverse in some way, but a very sweet little love story kicking off there.
No, I thought it was super cute, the scene where he comes to call on her and they just say nothing.
Right. They just sit next to each other and look out.
Oh, my favorite scene is when she tells him, I forget what it was. She was breaking down the music when they were out in the park or something. And she's like, "Oh no, this would be better played this way." Whatever. He goes, "That's excellent, thank you," and then just like walks off. And she's
Right.
like, "Oh, I guess we're done now." He's like,
And
"I
he's
just
actually going off to write the thing because he's inspired by what she
yeah."
said.
He's like, "I just thought of
That
something
was
really
cool.
thoughtful I could do, but like did not indicate that in any way."
Right.
And just her sheer fleeing the room when the other guy's like, "Yeah, I wouldn't mind having 8 kids," and she's like, "Nope, peace out."
Were any of you confused by the recast? Like at first I remember looking and like, who is this girl? Wait a minute. And then I read about it like, oh, okay.
Not only just because I hadn't really noticed Francesca in prior seasons, so I was happy to
Right.
take her as read, and I'm used to them all being 20 years older than they are, so that was kind of like, okay, fine.
I mean, did you all know why she left, right? What happened with that?
No,
No,
this is the first I'm hearing of any of this.
Yeah, I was reading about it. So Francesca was recast in the first season. She didn't really do much, and they kind of brought her in like towards the end and into the second season. And it was originally Ruby Stokes, and then she got the lead role in Netflix's Lockwood and Company. So
Oh, that's right.
she was originally, they were going to give her more to do in season 2, but because she had to go filming for that, she could only film 3 episodes, and then they had to like get rid of her. So that's why she kind of disappeared last season.
oh,
And so they recast her for this season. So
And then they canceled
they
that
wouldn't give her
show,
more.
unfortunately,
Right. That was the irony
which
of it all. Is
sucks
the show she moved to got canceled.
because that was a great show. I really like that show.
Right. And she was one of the stars of it too. So I mean, I get it from her point of view. Like, I mean, you have your chance to be like the star of a show. Of course, you're going to take that, even if it means giving up Bridgerton. But now that the show got canceled, she was probably like pissed, right?
Is this a
Although,
British production? Like the show is? I mean, it's made in England, but it's all like kind of under like British rules, sort of, like for the actors and everything.
I have no idea.
I know they just do things differently over there. Like a lot of shows, sometimes it might take a few years for a season to get out or whatever, and like recasting doesn't seem to be. They don't like to, I think, lock people in. Like, hey, you're signed on for 5 years to this show. Like a lot of Hollywood shows do. Like
Yeah.
people are sort of more free to leave or not leave, or
Paper protection, so people don't get signed up into indentured service for
Yeah, no,
multiple.
I think it's
their
great for the
lives.
actors, and I think it actually, I think the
Yeah.
system works better. You don't get people doing roles and they're bitter that they're there, right?
Mm.
Oh yeah, Patrick Stewart, when he signed on for Star Trek Next Generation, like his agent told him, "Don't worry about this like 5-season commitment for like
Right,
20
right.
episodes, right? Because you can like this like nothing can be as good as the original Star Trek. You'll be back in London doing like a different project essentially every week," and then it just took off.
Yep.
So is this does anyone know? Is this just the Francesca season 2 then by stealth? Like,
I
If
think
they're
I think they like Francesca and wanted to give her more to do, but I think she's still gonna get, her book's worth. I think they're just trying to give some of the other characters more to do. Because, like you said, I mean, the other kids, like any of the younger kids, would any of you even recognize them? Like, if they, I mean, I don't pay attention to almost any of the other kids unless they get a full story.
Yeah,
well,
I
the
didn't notice
sad,
there was a recast until you just mentioned it. So
yeah,
you know,
okay.
about the younger siblings, like, look, soap operas, don't like having child characters, so they'll just age them up very rapidly, right? So, like, I think we're in similar territory here.
Yeah, there's also
Maybe half
another.
the family will be recast by the end of it all.
There's also another putative romance, of course, because the mother has got a little
Yes, I
flirtation
love
going on
that.
Yeah, this is
with Lady
fun.
Danbury's
I like that.
roguish brother. So
Right?
how do you guys feel about that?
I loved it.
I think it's good. I think they had good chemistry.
I also like that she doesn't even realize she's in a budding romance with him yet. Like it's all from him. But I mean, I think she's titillated, but I don't think she realizes that that's where it's going.
And she'll still
Yeah.
be young, right? I mean, assuming she got married around 20 and her eldest is maybe 24. I mean, Jesus Christ, the woman's probably mid 40s or something, right? She's not that
Right.
old. So she could
Yeah.
totally have another go round. So I'm kind of excited by that. But I think it's more, arguably going to be used to flesh out, give Lady Danbury something to do.
Right.
But yeah, let's see where that goes. Could be fun.
I liked also Benedict's romance with the
Yeah.
widow, or fling with the widow, which is like showing that like it's like the certain niche that widows occupy on the marriage market of Cougar Town.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Black Sales alum Hannah New. I really enjoyed that stuff. That's what I was saying earlier with kind of like the other options, just kind of giving us, we get plenty of couples to choose from. If we're not interested in one, can be more interested in the other. And yeah, I really liked Benedict's stuff. I frankly I don't know what his match is in the book, but to me, he clearly should be an older woman. Like that's his type through and
Yep.
through.
An older
He
woman who
doesn't-
knows what she wants.
He does seem to go for businesswomen though, because wasn't he having an affair with the fake French lady who runs the dress shop? So he obviously
Yeah.
quite likes independent, sort of strong women for sure. I'm trying to see what the other big romances are going on this season. I feel like I'm missing one.
One quick question I wanted to ask with on the subject of Francesca, sort of, is who do you think is the biggest glow up this season? Francesca, Penelope, or Colin?
Penelope, 100%.
I mean, Penelope
Yeah.
just is gorgeous in this. Although Colin is looking super hot, and I barely noticed him in previous
There's
seasons.
a lot of fake tan going on though, isn't there?
Yeah,
Right.
that's true.
And a lot of time at the gym, and a lot of shirtless scenes where, like, we barely even noticed him before.
Yeah, he's just not as good looking as either season 1 or season 2's heroes for me. So
Right. This is true.
it's not working for me in quite the same way. I mean, I think the problem for me is the actress playing Penelope, Nicola Coughlan, is so pretty in real life. Like her
Right.
skin, her face. I mean, so yes, it's a glow up because she's got the better clothes, obviously, that are much more flattering.
Right.
But when over the years, just seeing her in proper fashion magazines with proper clothes and beautiful makeup, I mean, she's just very, very pretty. So, yeah, it doesn't feel like that much of a sort of difference in some ways. But I don't know, how do the rest of you feel? Who's your favorite glow up?
I'd have to go with Penelope probably, but they all look a lot better. Of course, who couldn't look good in those outfits?
We have one more story, don't we? We have the Will Mondrich and Alice Mondrich, who start off as like boxers and then bar owners. And now, thanks to some snooty cousin, their son is going to be a future member of the aristocracy. So now they're welcomed into high society. But it's made clear that while being part of society gives you some freedom, so you can sleep in the same bed as your wife, for example, shocking, he probably needs to give up the bar because you can't be on both sides of the class divide. How did you guys find this storyline?
I like the part where, I think, was it Benedict that was just explaining to them the rules of society, and there's what rules you can and can't break, because just how many of these rules are meant to keep the marriage market moving. But that they are just learning the limits of that, of just, look, if you just don't outwardly work, right, then if you're just married, you can do whatever you want behind closed doors.
yeah, they're more guidelines.
Interesting, Lady Danbury being the voice of, the Ton in this whole thing, basically saying, convincing the wife to talk him into giving up his dream, you know? It's kind of a weird twist to it, but it makes sense given where she comes from, you know? What she's given up for everything.
Yeah, I'm interested to see where it goes.
I mean, what's the actual hard limit on it? Can he like just be a silent partner and then just like manage the business from afar?
But he wouldn't be happy with that. So
Well, I know, and that's that's going to be the moral of the story at the end, right? But
of course we all want him to keep it, but he probably won't. But we'll see, maybe. Maybe they'll figure a way around it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reality, I mean, I do like it. Again, this is a way in which I think Shonda Land has or Shonda Rhimes has opened up the story a little bit to talk more about class and sort of the sacrifices you make to go from one bit to the next bit. The logic is they'll have to give it up, but I wonder if they'll try and do something different and radical with the storyline. Are there any other? Is there anything else you want to comment on? I mean, maybe a moment on just production design and costumes and wigs and that wonderful hot air balloon sequence, and I don't know. Any comments on all the look of the show?
That wig that the Queen wore in the last episode there, that was like, what was it? It was like Swan Lake in her wig. Did you see that there was like a whole insert part to it of like it was like hollow, and there was like a swan in there, and there were like sticks on the outside. It was like, this is wild.
Yeah, it's very cool. I think whoever does the costumes, I think they're amazing.
Yeah.
And they have evolved this season. There's different designs and styles, and I think it's they're taking more risks. I think Cressida and the Queen just by far have the best outfits.
Right.
For sure.
And actually, in real life, the actress who plays the Queen, Golda Rosheuvel, she wears amazing, very avant-garde clothes in real life. Like she connects with designers who are doing really kind of very sculptural, geometric, sort of interesting shapes. So she carries that even in her real life. And when you see her at award shows, she always just looks absolutely. I think again, she's just stunning in real life, and she just wears absolutely amazing clothes. So I think maybe they're capturing some of her personal risk taking with how she looks. And I think it's testament to her, because I think that spin-off has happened because she has become so iconic with what's really a cameo role.
Right. What's funny about her, quick side note, is that she was in Doctor Who this season, and she plays a character who's on a spaceship who's like kind of effectively a mechanic, kind of. And it's so weird seeing her in like normal, like drab clothes. Yep. In the Space Babies episode.
Yeah, the Space
that was
Babies,
her.
the one I watched.
And it's so weird seeing her in drab clothes. Like I took a minute to like, oh yeah, that is her.
That's so funny.
I mean, yeah, we've already said it, but yeah, I mean, Penelope's costume upgrades were ridiculous.
Amazing.
I mean, I do have a couple other things I wanted to bring up. One is the music. The obvious comparison for me is Westworld, where we kind of just get these, different arrangements of, modern pop songs, which for whatever reason, like, pleases me every time. Like, if there's like ever an easy trick to get me to like your stuff, this is it. and I enjoy every single part of it. I mean, is it the hookup between Colin and Penn? It's Pitbull. They did Pitbull for that. Are you kidding me?
Yep.
Ridiculous.
So the person who I think did this first was Sophia Coppola in Marie Antoinette, where she used a lot of early British sort of 1980s new wave and punk tracks. And sometimes she just used them, and then other times she had them played on harpsichord or by orchestras. So there's a very cool scene where she has Susie and the Banshees, Hong Kong Garden, but done sort of pizzicato on violin. So which is very kind of pre-Bridgerton, pre-Westworld. So I kind of feel that maybe she's the originator of that, but I could be wrong. Maybe others have done it before, but I love it too. It just never ceases to amuse me as well.
Right, that film is very Bridgerton, or it really does feel like that film walked so Bridgerton could run, of just a lot of playful anachronisms as well, of just like, like the Converse shoes and Marie Antoinette, right?
And the sort of hyper real, gorgeous, like pastel colors, and just these very confectionery, kind of luscious, luxurious looks, and just really playing with the clothes and the hair. So I feel Bridgerton owes a lot to Marie Antoinette, an absolute lot, for sure. Matt, any other big comments to make? That was a very good one to make.
Yeah, I guess I mean the other thing would just be the question of the gay storyline, because that's something I had heard on other podcasts where the showrunners or creators have said that they're gonna do one, I guess I'm kind of curious about it, and also skeptical is not the right word, but there's been they did a clear world building choice, with the Queen and tying in the racial issues to that, but I feel like there hasn't been the same world building aspect where I just feel like a gay storyline would still be tough in the world building that they've set up. So I'm curious, and
It would have to be very closeted.
yeah, I
As
guess
it was, as
I
it
don't
was
quite
in
see how they're gonna do it to at least to our satisfaction, like the way that the viewers would want it.
right.
Yeah, I
Well,
don't
they
know.
did it in Queen Charlotte, so
Yeah, with
Right,
the
yeah,
psychic. Yeah.
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 Um,
What is interesting though is one of the debutantes during the presentation sequence this season, she was using sign language.
yeah, I noticed that.
Mm.
And one was in a pseudo wheelchair.
Oh, right. And then
They-
there's the other one of Penelope's suitors who was in a wheelchair too.
Right.
yeah.
Very,
They
very
could
fantastic wheelchair. Like,
they could have Eloise and Cressida have a gay romance before Eloise goes off and gets married, but I
right.
think the problem is because the siblings all have to end up with heteronormative partners, or their straight partners. It's going to be a doomed gay relationship, which maybe is appropriate for the time. But I think
Right.
you then maybe fall into that trope where in modern TV all gay relationships must end in doom and despair. We can't just have
Mhm.
happy ever after.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to be said for if you're going to do a gay relationship, maybe it's for Cressida, but with someone who isn't a sibling, because I quite like the idea of Shonda Rhimes being able to do what E.M. Forster did in Morris, which is shock the world with a gay romance that ends happily. Like maybe that's the most radical thing of all. And if you're going to have black people moving around society, then have that as the storyline. But I know what you mean. I think it's a little bit treacherous, isn't it?
Mhm.
What would you like to see for a gay romance? Who would you like to see?
I mean, that's like because they introduced two people this season, with Eloise, and I feel like even Francesca in some way, where it's just like, man, these guys, like these two, don't seem like they're interested in men, and so it just it just calls, and I mean Cressida the same way too. All three of them were just kind of with the problems they're dealing with, and it just seems like that one of them might go that way, and so that's why I was just it's been on my mind thinking about it.
Yeah, it is rather, like interesting about like updating these classics because it is the Regency novel is centered around the marriage plot. But then there's but also just like what you're choosing to update or what's your big twist on the story, but you're not really like doing for other spaces. But then it's like, do you necessarily like have to? Although of course it like raises the question of if this is there, why is the other thing there? But
I think one way they could do it is they could have, maybe a more modern sensibility to it of like, maybe you'll have, I don't know, Eloise and Cressida get together, but then eventually Eloise goes off to get married, but it's not doomed like they get a happy kind of throupling or, maybe not so publicly, but, privately she takes her in because maybe, they could publicly say that she felt bad for the spinster. So she takes her in to like live with her or something. They could do something like that. That would be pretty modern. I mean, obviously wouldn't fit in the time. But then again, if it had been done in that time, I don't know people would question it. So
they just say like she's her companion or something, and then
Right.
Oh, I'm
just
sure it was plenty.
move on
I'm
to
sure it
different
was
things.
plenty done in that time, right? I mean,
right.
look at Gentleman Jack. I'm sure lots of these Boston marriages were occurring, right? These spinsters who are
Right.
companions who've been together for like 40 years and clearly are
Right.
a couple or whatever. It arguably, in some ways, it was probably easier for women to do that than men.
Right. Definitely.
Yeah.
And it probably remains so actually. Okay. Anything else you'll want to say about Bridgerton Part 1? Season 3, Part 1?
Yeah, although we were, in the first season, it did seem like that they were angling to, without any book knowledge, it would seem that like Benedict's introduction into, a lot of vices would be. It seems like that they were like that would have, or that had the possibility to be turned into a coming out story, or but it
Yeah.
wasn't. So
Right.
Yeah, they're really hamstrung by that deal. But I wonder how much that deal with Julia Quinn is open to renegotiation because she seems like quite a sort of
or
sensible.
what if they
Uh-huh.
keep the name of one of the they just change the sex of one of the later partners of one of the Bridgerton children, of just say
Mm.
like it's the same storyline of that, but I can't tell you because I don't have the contract in front of me, right?
Yeah, the problem is they are in some ways quite conservative norms as far as they are just so linked to the act of getting married and that whole thing. So if you don't have the problem with the gay storyline is there's no marriage
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
in that time,
Right.
sadly.
Definitely, yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, this is just like the equivalent of that Onion article of like woman stops being a feminist for 30 minutes so she can watch Say Yes to the Dress. I mean, just like not everything is or
Right.
like not
Yeah.
everything is like or not everything is able to be like put on or like reshaped to modern standards. But
Yeah, I agree with that. And most of what I watch is horribly regressive, right? Like I'm a huge fan of Real Housewives, but I feel that with Shonda Rhimes, I mean, she's made a fuck ton of money, be hugely successful, right? Writing shows that are both commercial, accessible, but also seem to be able to push an agenda, and therefore I think the expectations then fall because it's one of her shows that she will be able to somehow pull it off. I guess the difference is this is a costume drama and that brings a whole nother set of constraints. But look at the audacity of doing the racial stuff the way she did it in
Right.
retrospect.
oh yeah,
In,
and it
so if anyone can do it, it will be her.
yeah,
um,
and it's just like she deserves the credit for like just like just trying to make or whoever like was responsible for like bringing that up at the meeting. I'm just like saying like let's just have all ethnicities welcome for the auditions and to just like really do like non-traditional casting. But it
Yeah,
does
and it worked
it
out great. I mean,
yeah
Yeah,
it
I
sucks
the
think
that
it really
response was
worked.
pretty good too. Yeah.
mm,
yeah
I mean, there's
a
always
little-
going to be a few bigots out there complaining, but who cares? I
yeah,
think
Yeah,
that's what we
yeah,
get to now.
Likewise.
Like,
Right, and it sucks that if you picked up the books thinking that it was going to be as like non-traditional in that way as the show was, it sucks if you were disappointed, but at the same time, it's just like it's like give the credit to the person who did that, right? Not that was not necessarily the author for this.
one of the things I really liked about the Queen Charlotte spinoff was that was actually one of the major storylines, was explaining how that the mixing of of black people into that society, the higher society, happened, and how
Mm.
the Queen was a big part of that. I thought it was really clever that they made that a major storyline of explaining it rather than it just sort of happened. Like they really plotted it out well, I thought.
Yeah.
Bringing Lady Danbury and the Queen in as like the main characters we got to see it happen with, and
Mm.
how like that was an important storyline for the characters, that progress.
It's almost like it would have to happen at that level again.
Hmm.
Maybe the queen dies in the latter seasons and you get the son inheriting and then he turns out to be gay and that's how they do it.
There you
Because really for that kind of seismic change, it has to be the monarchy who does it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting about like these adaptation choices because there's also Anne with an E on Netflix, and that's Anne of Green Gables adaptation, but they try to make it in similar territory of like no the like the girl in the village who's engaged to the schoolmaster while she's still a student isn't like she's not actually going to marry him, right? So, but some aspects.
Ways and means.
Yes. So it is like in the sense of like Hamilton or Bridgerton, like Canada then told by Canada today. But
Yeah. And all these things reflect both, don't they? What are you most looking forward to in the second half of the season? Or do you think it's all pretty obvious how this plots out and we'll enjoy it, but there's nothing too surprising?
Yeah, I mean the Colin and Penelope stuff. Yeah, you can guess the plot points for that. It's really the other the other couples where obviously since I assume they're mostly additive. Curious where
Mm.
they go.
More room to maneuver.
Yeah.
I think I'm most looking forward to Eloise and Cressida for that reason. I'd love it if they pursued a little bit of gay romance for them. I'd be all here for it.
Maybe they will. We'll see.
I didn't really feel much chemistry between them for that. I just like it seems like like Eloise like values her companionship, but then it also seems like they're not actually friends beyond that, at least out of what we've seen so far.
Yeah, which in fairness is not much. It's been 4 episodes or something, so
Right.
that's not
And
that
only a
much.
few minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else from anyone else?
I'll be interested to see, as we move into new seasons, how much we're going to get of the old characters, because obviously our first couple have both now quit the show, so we're not going to see them anymore. But I thought it was interesting, like in the very first episode, Anthony and Kate almost managed to steal the show in like one scene.
I think
They're
basically
just
they'll
so
do
hot.
the same. I think they'll bring back couples just for one episode's worth of stuff. But
Mhm.
that's it. I mean, the difference is with Penelope and Colin, or certainly Penelope, because she's Lady Whistledown, so I suppose she has to stay through them all.
That's
But I
true,
think the
yeah.
others, as they're married off, they'll sort of disappear and the focus will shift. Because otherwise, it's a massive cast. I mean, it
Right.
must be very expensive to keep all these people. What I think is sad is like Reggae Jean Page left, and he just hasn't
Right.
really done anything since. So,
He was in the Dungeons and Dragons movie.
oh, was
Right.
he? Okay, I didn't see
it
that.
was a
that's
Which
minor
the
I
role.
mean,
thing.
that was a good movie. It was but good in that. But yeah, he just kind of
Minor
seemed
role.
like he wanted to move on and didn't have something to go on to, which is a shame.
And even
Yeah, and
Phoebe
it's not
Dynevor, right? I mean,
considering.
she turns up at the
And
Met Ball, but has she actually or Met Gala? She's not really done anything, has she, acting wise?
Yeah, she had fair play this year.
Well, she came back for an episode last season, didn't she?
Well,
Yep.
multiple. I
Yeah, she
saw.
was
I
in a
saw. I
few
saw.
last season, but
Yeah, it was more him that didn't want to come back, I think.
well, it
Yeah,
was
I
both
saw.
of them. It was more like he was like right out the gate, no, and maybe, or I remember reading that he really didn't want anything to do with the show. He just saw it as a gig, and it sucks because like if he hasn't had a lot of success, maybe there's more. I would have thought that maybe there was like more like British stuff that he was in as opposed to like the stuff that
Right.
No,
translates
he's
to
just in a bunch of ads for Audi, but that's it, really. I haven't
okay.
seen him do
But
anything.
Oh
yeah,
wow.
right.
See, I thought maybe he was worried about getting typecast or something, but it could just be like the amount of attention and kind of like fan reaction he received. Like maybe he just wasn't into that.
Mm.
But
did-
like the actress that played young Rhaenyra in House of the Dragon, she just said, like I'm done with fantasy, and it's just like okay, I mean, like
Really?
she's kind of her role House of the Dragon kind of ran its course, right? But then like
Well, didn't she get
it
cast
is.
as Supergirl, or was that?
I don't know. I haven't kept up with it, but like it's just like sometimes in like with these like big franchise things with a super online fan base, you just
Yeah,
like you just can't really like if the actor just saw it as a gig, you can't really I mean look, you don't have to watch everything else they're in, but it's just like at some point like they just saw it as a gig and you have to deal with that, right?
I think, but surely you'd want to value security. I mean, like the check. It's not
Yeah, it
guaranteed
is.
you'll get another
It
one. I
is.
mean, it's like that girl
Like
who
for
played
that
Lady
reason,
Sybil in Downton and left after, or, all these people in Downton who wanted to be written out to go off and felt good. Downton was constraining their big Hollywood career, and then they never do anything. Jessica Brown,
yeah.
the
right.
She
same.
kind of petered out. Yeah.
Yeah, and you just
Yeah,
think,
but
at least Lady Mary still has a regular gig 10 years later.
Right.
you know?
I mean,
yeah,
to be fair,
but
to be fair
that's
though,
that's their mistake to make,
I
to
clearly
be
would
fair
have
though,
married Lord Debling, right?
right. To be fair in the industry, I mean, you have to strike when you're hot. Like you can get when you're hot, and you can get all the roles, and then when you're not, you're not. And so I mean,
But
I feel
that's
like
the
for someone
tragedy,
like
isn't it?
Regé Page, like for
He
someone like Regé Jean,
he wasn't hot though. So the learning from that is the show was hot and you weren't because you actually didn't get more
right? Right.
Hmm.
work. So I think that's. Well,
Well,
I wonder if he would have got more work if he were white. I don't know, but
right. And also, if you're an actor, are you ever going to learn that lesson? Like, I wasn't hot. I mean, that's something. I mean,
Right.
that's their whole career motivation. Is I'm going to be a superstar, and when it
mm,
starts to happen, I could see you wanting to move and strike. Because if you do, and probably their agents are telling them to do that too. Because if you don't do it now, if you're stuck on Bridgerton for 5 years, how much more of a story was he going to get in the next 3 seasons? So
I
if
don't
he
know.
you
I
had,
know, he
guess
hasn't
the
even done
difference is
theatre. I
that
mean, Jonathan Bailey's been
right,
doing so much theatre, and
right,
I don't know, yeah.
yeah, and sometimes people leave a show and it doesn't work out. They don't become the next Tom Cruise, but
right,
they starred in 3 movies and they had a show and like they got all of these opportunities and they all just were crap. Or
Mm.
so you see a lot of that where someone leaves, and I mean I think that almost happened to what's her name when she left Downton Abbey. She got her own show. She got it just
Jessica Brown
didn't kind of.
Finley, yeah.
Yeah, and I love her as an actress, but it was like, and what was the show she did on Peacock or something? It didn't get renewed. Like stuff, that's just what happens. Like
Mm.
you take your shot and it doesn't work out. So
True. Oh well, on that happy note of failed Hollywood careers.
there you go.
From such a bright and sunny show, we've ended up on such a downer. Oh my god, that's so wrong.
where's Glenn Fandango?
Well, I thoroughly enjoy Bridgerton. I have to say, it just lights
Mhm.
up my life. It's just so frothy and gorgeous and beautiful. And
Yep,
if it manages to push a progressive envelope, then that is
even
just the
better.
cherry on top, right? I mean, that's just beautiful.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
Yeah, I
and look,
didn't.
they can
I
keep turning this out as long as they want. Like they can make more, or they can like rapidly age up all the kids of the pairings.
and then
And
there
then
are
just not
offshoot
explain
books about
anything.
the kids and prequels. I mean, like the Julia Quinn universe is huge. I mean, they could do like 20 shows of this. So There's more to come, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like the nature of it means that if they're they have an excuse to recast people so they don't get hung up on stars and negotiations like that, right?
It'll always be cheap to produce because actually no one's in the spotlight bar one season, right? Which is kind of
Right.
commercially genius in a way.
I know, right?
Yeah. God, it's gone cynical again. Okay, we should round this out.
Right. I was gonna say, take advantage of our actors.
Before we sub them all with AI. I'm actually in a really good
Right.
mood today. I don't know why I've gone so dark. Thank you all for joining for this season 3 part 1 chat. Listeners, we hope you enjoyed this. Feel free to jump on the Discord. If you want to do that, go to our YouTube channel, search for Vassals of Kingsgrave. You'll find a link to the Discord there, or you can just comment on the YouTube video. We'd love to continue the conversation. And hopefully we'll have a season 3 part 2 wrap-up podcast, but it might get caught up in the juggernaut that is House of the Dragons season 2. So not sure that's necessarily going to happen, at least in a very timely way, because we'll be in the thick of House of the Dragons, our first love. But yeah, thank you all for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks,
too.
Bina.
Well, thanks,
Thanks.
Adam, co-hosting. Bye, guys.
Bye.
So
Bye,
Bye.
guys. Good to talk to you all again.
Yeah.